welcome to another episode of the CP Podcast. I'm your host, CP, and it's the podcast. We're not going to do the whole CP thing. We started late. That was CP time. I'm CP. That's CP enough. All right? I always got my co-host, the co-host with the most, the person who has a body in her body. You know what I'm saying?
Sure do.
I call her the double up. I want y'all to make some noise right now and give it up for Maya. And then we got, of course, the man with more black clothes than an off TV. This guy is stacked with black hoodies and tees and tanks. Want y'all to make some noise, give it up for Amir. And then we got Tony in the building, man.
Hello again.
What's up, Tony?
I'm becoming a regular.
You, man, well, yeah, you are. You've been behind the scenes for a long time.
That's true.
And we also have my daughter, who just came from gymnastics camp. You can't see her. Say hi. Just say hi.
Hello.
There you go. She said hello. So I said say hi. She said hello. More syllables, more work. She's a hard worker. Hello is, you know what that means. Hello is, that's intelligence. You don't just say hi. That was a test. Thank you, sweetheart, for saying hello. We teaching her what me and her mom we have her on the program. Vegetables and alphabet. Vegetables. And
Very good.
Whatever. Anyway, so we here, man. We got some crazy stuff to talk about. We keeping it clean because I got my baby in the room. She don't need to know what kind of potty mouth her dad has until she gets older and she can learn how to subscribe and she has to pay for my Patreon. It's going to be $10 for her to learn about her father. $10 a month to learn about me. So you want to use your allowance to learn who I am? Anyway. So last time we left off, we talked about, what did we talk about last week?
We were talking about flat Earth.
Right.
But flat Earth kind of becomes everything.
It kind of becomes, and that's really, it does, because people were sending me stuff about the firmament in the Bible and how God, and that's when the flat earthers, they take that and they run with it. They ain't got to believe in God. They be like, the Bible says it. The Bible says, like, bro, dude. But anyway, the firmament at the bottom of the ocean, at the top of the water that we have above us, is from what they are saying, right?
Well, it's, that's controversial. Some
mean?
people say it's like a hard dome. Some people do say it's like a bubble encased and there's water outside.
Yeah, that's what I think.
As above, so below kind of
Look
stuff.
at Maya, already ready to laugh. Well, listen, I think
It's a
that...
comedy podcast.
You've never been out.
Right, you've never been out of here. It's like you telling us we're all at the bottom of the jar, and you're telling us what's at the top of the jar. Listen, this is what I will say. People are talking about a lot more about how the aliens are coming out of the water.
I've heard that. I've legitimately
USOs.
heard that.
Yeah.
Unidentified
Submerged.
objects.
We've
And
talked
what
about
they're
that.
doing is, apparently, from space, if you come from underneath this flat Earth that we're on, through the water, you could blast up through and get into our bubble of atmosphere.
What I've heard, and this is what Bob Lazar said. Sorry, he gets mad at me. Then this is what Bob Lazar said, is that they're actually shifting gravity outside of their ship. So that's how they're traveling. They're shifting the gravity field. So going into water isn't as hard as you would think it is. But Bob Lazar, let's just fill you in. He's a guy who came out, I believe he came out like 30, 40 years ago. He came out a long, long time ago. And he said he had worked for these government agencies and he'd worked on these spacecrafts. And he was kind of a self-taught rocket scientist.
Right. Yeah, he said he built like a jet engine when he was very young himself. And
People always say that. That's such a thing to say. I did jet fuel in my garage. Like, shut up. No, you did not.
That's what he says.
Yeah, I know. And who's going to... He's the government now. Who's going to tell him he's wrong?
Well, he also says he went to what? He went to a big... I can't remember. He went to some kind of college.
It was not Area 51.
No, but he went to like a prestigious university who now say he did not, but there is evidence that he did and they have scrubbed him. I believe.
Wow.
Oh, yeah. They were coming out
this.
against this guy.
So for 30 years, he's come out and said that he was basically brought in by a covert government operation. He was shown a piece of technology and he was told, we need to replicate this, right? And what he was describing 30 years ago is essentially what that guy is saying now. Have you seen what's come out
What did he
recently?
say now? First of all, can I just say, like, government, give me a mission. Like, why am I not getting, like, why are you just picking people to know the stuff that I'm asking every week? Pick me, give me a mission. And if I can't replicate it, then you're like, hey, I couldn't do this one. You know what I'm saying? It's like, what you gonna do? You couldn't do it.
They didn't do it.
Yeah, you couldn't do it.
couldn't
Like,
do
okay,
it.
this was impossible.
years.
Yeah, it's impossible. Sorry.
He said that the scientists were trying to fly this thing, or they were trying to recreate this, and they broke up in a fuel cell, and it was so powerful, it was like a nuclear explosion, and all the scientists in the area died. He was talking about this element 115. This is boblazar.com. And I mean, this is interesting. This is like, he's like a legend in UFO circles.
So right now, there are members of Congress that are actually working to declassify. I'm gonna sound like an idiot. To declassify a bunch of stuff that is essentially this. It's saying the same stuff. So
Similar
Bob Lazar
stuff,
is saying that they found a craft in a mountain.
Right, crashed.
That
He
had
said
been
it was there for
many
thousands of
Yeah.
years.
Yep. And they managed to turn it back. I saw that.
Yep.
And they managed to somehow get it to activate, or they tried to move it and pieces started coming off of it.
Yeah.
That was that one, right?
Yeah, he was saying that it was basically like some sort of gravity device.
Yeah.
That manipulated gravity. But anyway, I don't know how we got here from Flat Earth. But
what
there's
we're
a guy
talking
right
about.
now who's
Yeah.
saying essentially the same stuff, which is
Flat Earth is
fascinating.
connected to everything because it's like, well, they're visiting. You know what I'm saying? And Flat Earth, you can start there and literally just throw a dart and land anywhere and then come back to Flat Earth.
Yeah.
So, did you hear about the one that they were talking about recently? Because all of these things have become declassified now. So now it's like, okay, what do we do with this knowledge? Now it's like, do we believe the government that's been lying to us the whole time anyway? Like, they've literally gone through all these documents and blacked out everything that's like the important stuff. So it'll read like this crossed out craft that we found that appears to be from crossed out, killed, crossed out. It's like, so we don't know what exactly it's saying, but they're starting to admit that stuff is stuff.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm
seems like,
saying?
yeah.
And I mean, that's a huge step for us. Like, I never thought in our lifetime, or at least I know our grandparents did.
We say it all the time. Like, if we could see this headline 5 years ago,
yes,
we'd be like, no way.
But
That's
do you
fake.
feel like we've been softly conditioned?
It's soft.
It's like every year, like an alien movie dropped, and then you know what I'm saying, like a new toy will drop, and
Yeah.
it's just landing us.
Well, to be the skeptic here, I would say that they probably want a lot more money at the Pentagon.
Mm-hmm. Well, we
And-
have a Space Force now.
We have a Space Force. They want a lot more money at the Pentagon. So maybe I'm happy with giving them a lot of money.
I am too. I'm about to say, print them. They work there. Go down the hall, press print yourself a couple billion, and get us the answers that we
A
need.
couple trillion.
Or
so they want to
trillion,
colonize.
right. Or
They
it's
want to
nothing.
colonize space.
Or it's nothing. And this is all just it's a distraction. What is it? What did they say on the Dark Horse podcast? It's a psyops.
Psyops until
Psyops.
we hear otherwise.
But
Yeah.
I mean, well, that's an easy way for people to dismiss it. Which brings me to AI. This is my thought. I was thinking this today as I was driving about how AI fits into this,
Mhm.
right? And essentially what AI does is it takes all of the knowledge from all over the internet, things that people know. Let's say there are 1,000 teams across the world working on jet propulsion and gravity like manipulation, right? Every team has 1,000th of the truth, essentially, in this example. And so the AI gathering all of these thousands of truths can come to a realization about these are the elements needed to travel at the speed of light based on the information that is out there that you guys are not computing fast enough. Like, you guys aren't communicating with the guys over in India and then the guys over in China and then the guys over in Russia quick enough. But if all of your truths are put into the algorithm, the AI can find it and be like, well, I know this from Russia, I know this from Japan, I know this from China, and we can get to certain definites faster.
Right. Have you heard the theory? This is gonna blow your mind. That the aliens are AI. That humanity, our bodies, are the gestation period for an AI intelligence. So basically, all these aliens in outer space all come from a species that creates artificial intelligence, and that artificial intelligence leaves and
Another race.
essentially.
And so we're kind of like bio machines, and it's in our DNA.
You can interpret it that way. But
Well, DNA is a great way to store information.
Is AI God? Is it the digital God? Like, have we
That's what Elon Musk said that they were trying to create. They're trying to
Yeah.
make. They're trying to make a god, and he was like, "Yeah, I don't want any part of this." But define what God is.
Well, all knowing, right? That's what we always have said. That is all knowing, right? But all knowing what though? The facts that we can come up with, the things that we know. It knowing all of those things, right? It knows what we're gonna do before we do it. It understands our creation. It can break down. You know what I'm saying? Like it's like it may not be what we've always wanted, which was a God that looks like the Dos Equis man. You know what I'm saying? But at the end of the day, it's like what they're trying to create is something that takes what smart is and only has that. Like we talked about last week, the horsepower for this is Einstein's. Like that's like what they're using it as the
And
horsepower.
then we talked about how Einstein wasn't just a high IQ.
Right.
Einstein had a creativity thing which we couldn't.
Absolutely.
We can't really
quantify that. Right.
But the thing is, now if you say that we are in some kind of simulation, so then the AI could be God because it could have all of this computing power, and that the Big Bang was to turn it on. But this is how whenever we get a new technology, we explain the nature of the universe through this new technology. So when it was radio waves, it was that. When it was gravity. The original gravity, Newton gravity, it was that. And then it goes like that. So this is how we think. It's not necessarily how the universe is. It's how we interpret the universe.
Now, us finding spaceships and the FBI telling us, yeah, we found some spaceships. We don't know if we came off of these things or if aliens came off of these things. We don't know what came off of the spaceships,
or if anything came off these things.
Right. I mean,
drones, possibly.
Right. Could have been. Yeah, of course, it could have been unmanned drones.
It's most likely it's unmanned drones because getting something from
Makes
there
sense.
to here, unless they are able to warp space, do wormhole stuff, which has been theoretical until now. If they're able to warp space,
that's
they can get through.
Because
that's what they've been talking about.
Before drones were like such a thing in the zeitgeist for us, that we always thought of aliens as like biological creatures that get off a ship. But the more we think about it now, we're like, well, why would they do that?
Why would they do that?
Why would they need to do
We
that?
don't even do that.
No.
Like we send up, like, imagine if we found a rover from Mars, right? But then what would that rover look like? It would look like whatever they thought it would need to be on their planet. Maybe they have a planet where they don't touch the ground.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like we think about like the Jetsons, right? And the idea that they were living in this kind of like above the surface type of situation. And so their cars look like this.
Yeah.
Because they didn't need to touch the ground. Right? We're sending up tanks and rovers because we touch our ground.
Yeah.
And we're sending it to their ground trying to get samples and stuff like that. But it's like, if they were to see that, they would be like, yo, what is that crazy stuff down there that could be on the ground?
Mm-hmm.
Well, he says when he saw the craft that these guys, this is Bob Lazar we're referring to, that these guys must have been small because it only fits for a small person. But now we're talking about traveling to Mars. We're talking about having the whole crew be women.
Really?
Yeah, because women are small. If you have it all women, you don't have to worry about anyone getting pregnant. And tiny fingers are really good at doing all these things.
First of all, two things. All women aren't small, and we know this. We shouldn't have to go there. They could get some small women, or they can get jockeys who are small guys.
We figured that out a long time ago.
I also think that a jockey could never get pregnant. But a woman going to another world could mess around and get knocked up.
That's true.
By something.
It's a biological hazard.
Like literally, it's almost like it's very inviting to be like, we are sending you vessels to vesselize. That's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying. And I feel like a bigger woman would be a lot more keen to fighting off vesselization. Now, having said that, because Maya's looking at me like, I'm just saying, having said that, is there a possibility? Okay, listen. Okay, look. Is there a possibility of some form of, and when I say this, I mean, for the old school, because you know what? We often have forgotten about good old earthly midgetry. We have forgot about it. Because I'm going to tell you what. Do you think that they asked all the little people around the world if they were cool with doing away with the word midget? Midget sounds delicious. Can you imagine you go to a restaurant and be like, can I get a 10-piece spicy midget with Polynesian sauce? Polynesian and some tiny shoes with those midgets? I'm just saying.
So you're saying it should be midgets?
But you can't call them midgets. I just think that they are our coolest looking form. And if we were going to send them to another planet, they would be like, oh, okay. Oh. Look at these little things. You know?
I think it's easier to find women than midgets.
You say what?
It's easier to find women than midgets that are
I understand
astronauts.
If we put out an APB like in a newspaper, like, hey, listen, every hood got a dude named Midget Mike. And that was his claim to fame. Yeah, Midget Mike picks cars. Midget Mike can flip. Midget Mike can do backflips. Now, he can't even, he got a tattoo on his neck that say double M, Eminem, and it's for Midget Mike. He has to call himself Little People Mike now.
So you think this alien race sent all their midgets to us?
I absolutely do. I absolutely do.
There are tall grays and there are short grays.
There are very short grays, and short grays have a temper on them.
It's all theoretical here.
But I do
so
understand
maybe.
sending a single sex, right? Like,
Yeah.
instead of sending men and women.
Men and women, right. I could get how boredom, you know what I'm saying,
Astronauts claim they've never had sex in space.
That's crazy. I know. Yeah, well, I don't even know what sex is. That's crazy. We're going to talk about that.
Crazy.
Thank you, sweetheart. Please go, put your earpods in. But listen, they claim that, but I mean, you know, if you go to Brazzers, they have a whole section, whatever. Anyway, so
Tartaria, huh?
Tartaria. But I will say this though, two things. One of the things I found, because now they're coming out with all this alien stuff, and now you don't know what's real, right? So now you're like, okay, well, people are taking advantage of the fact that things are getting declassified. They know this, and so they're trying to declassify their own little bullcrap. One of them I saw was about how they saw a ship. They got a ship, and it's about 13 feet in, like, you know, not very big, a small ship.
Probably the size of this room.
Yeah, probably the size of, like, this room from side to
The
side.
width of this room.
They had a guy go in there, and inside of it, it was as big as a football stadium. The guy was so disoriented by what was going on because stepping into it, and, you know, that he's like suffered from a lot of, like, whatever, PTSD style headache type stuff. You know, the typical stuff that they say is associated with anything you don't understand. But this particular, they said that the way that these aliens move was they were bending space and time, like you just said. Like, they were like, the way that they could, all of our concepts were just not their concepts. Like, anything that you thought you could think, they weren't thinking that.
That's interesting.
Yeah, because it's like, well, you know, and so there's that. Then there's a video that I sent you earlier where they said that a cigar shaped craft about a mile long landed, and about a few hundred aliens came out that were black.
A mile long.
Yeah, a mile long.
This is what this guy says.
Air Force Base. These cigar-shaped ships were over a mile in length. One of them landed on the airport landing strip area. When it touched the ground, it created an earthquake like about a 3.5 to 4.0. It terrified everybody in the area. The back of this craft opened up, and several hundred young men with huge, heavy weapons came out of two sides of the ship and formed a protection line around the ship. And the people at that Air Force base, the commander, had a meeting with the individuals that were aboard this ship. And this particular race that landed those ships and that are seen in these huge cigar-shaped ships, they are a black race. They look like African Americans. They were about 6'4", 6'5", these tight-fitting black leather outfits on, and the weapons that they came out of the ships with, they were huge weapons. And if you've ever seen a race of people that were conquerors, that had never been conquered, they've got this look about them of arrogance. That is exactly what
Yeah, that was
these,
funny when they had that.
extraterrestrials had.
It's like, why would they show a regular dude in the butt, though?
These people at the American
With Cyclops.
Air Force Base, that not only were they from a militaristic society, but they had controlled a large portion of the galaxy that we live in. And this was the statement that Ronald Reagan was making to the United Nations when he said that if all the countries on the planet realized that there was a threat from outer space and from an alien civilization, we would all come together, but he was not allowed to make this statement. What I tell you is true, and the gentleman that you had on before, tell him to look up.
Often forget how much unites all the members of humanity. Perhaps we need some outside universal threat to make us recognize
pause it
this
real
common
quick.
Where's
ground.
this from?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
This is an excerpt that somebody put on the TikTok, but this is all I could find that they sent this to me. Like, I don't even know how it ties into what Ronald Reagan was saying, but it's like I could see the world if some big
The Harlem Globetrotters.
if some big space shacks came down here, like that would scare the mess out of the world, and they'd be like, okay, all right, let's chill, because there are 300 shacks in Denver right now, and they are not playing, and they have weapons the size of 2 shacks. It's just like, yo, like, here's the thing, with the aliens being grays and tall whites and reptilians, I would like to believe that there's some black aliens somewhere too.
Yeah.
We can't just be out here without alien representation.
Yeah.
This seems like the plot of an Afrofusion or Afrofuturistic exploitation movie from the 70s.
Can I tell you how good that movie would be?
That would be really good.
We from space, sucker. Jive, Earthling. You a jive, Earthling. But I'm just saying, like, it's one of those things where you begin to think, like, here's the thing. This sounds like a society of Africans that for generations have found a way to leave this planet and go do some other stuff. Like, for them to come back looking just like the whole NBA, you know what I'm saying? Like, it almost makes me feel like there are groups of people on this planet. Like, what if there was a mass evacuation? Because there are time periods of people who are just flat out gone. Like, their stuff is here and their stories are here. And if there was some kind of evacuation, I mean, we would essentially start over. We would still have the buildings that they built, just like we talked about the churches and stuff like that. We would still have things that were built from our race of humans that just they left. Like, where are the Mayans?
Oh, the Mayans, you can trace their DNA, so they're still around. The civilization, because sometimes a civilization will collapse, but the people will disperse.
Right, yeah, they'll disperse, right.
And so you can still trace the DNA back.
But the civilization is wiped out to a point where their main, you know what I'm saying? Like,
their government structure.
Yeah, their government structure
collapses.
And a huge part of enough of their society to where you can't be, like, are they all together? Are they still, you know what I'm saying? Like,
well, now they can kind of trace back to, they're getting better about it, about tracing back where the DNA comes from. So they can take, like, our genes and be like, they're even tracing, like, a lot of Neanderthal genes and seeing, like, where.
Oh, you definitely know some Neanderthals. They them big old foreheads, and you know what I'm saying. Anybody with, like, lips wider than where their eyes are at.
Neanderthals are white people.
Well, not all white people.
No, actually, it's like in the Europeans, it's like 1% to 4% because they interbred because that's what they were.
Are those the ones that got, like, super hairy backs?
I don't know.
I was right at Tony, like, let me see them arms, man. Nah, but you know, your arms are pretty hairy, but like I don't really grow a lot of body hair like that.
Maybe.
You know what I'm saying?
What's interesting though is I know we wanted to talk about Tartaria, but so my friend who I talk about all the time has kind of really lost it. I say lost it.
We all know.
But
We all
he's
got one of
down the
those.
hole,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
He is of the opinion that the alien disclosure, full psyops. There's no such thing as aliens. He is hard biblical truth person now. He hasn't fallen all the way into flat Earth, but Tartaria is really just an offshoot of flat Earth, I think. At least how the communities kind of come together
Explain
on Twitter.
Tartaria for our, because I know like, we've touched on it before.
I keep saying it, and I've realized nobody really knows what it is. So Tartaria is the idea that you're gonna get excited. There's some of this that I really like.
I'm excited right now.
And I
even like the name. The name sounds like a
dope,
steak on a
right?
cracker.
Yeah. So Tartaria, in
Russian.
reality, outside of the theory, is what they used to call sections of what is now Russia and like northern China, whatever. That was called Tartaria. So there are maps where it says Tartaria over this stretch of land, right? So the idea of Tartaria is there was a hyper advanced civilization that basically had free energy that was coming from the atmosphere, kind of
Like the Wi-Fi type of
energy coming into buildings like Wi-Fi. That's why you see on what's the building style? Not Baroque, not
Gothic?
Victorian. Gothic, like Gothic style. Think Gothic style
and they
churches.
have the amplifiers at the top, like
So
the conductors.
yeah. So they've got those brass things on the top, like the churches that have pull up like the church. What am I thinking? Stained glass windows, right? They have that kind of like flower of life sort of design or whatever.
Yeah.
So the theory is that this hyper advanced civilization existed for hundreds of years, spread all over the earth, literally every country on earth, right? If you're watching, you can see these churches and stuff. So that those windows and stuff was all part of a conductor, and that you would come to these places and it would heal your energy, it would heal your body. You would get free energy from the atmosphere, and that then I'm not misspeaking, 1850, there was a worldwide mud flood, a flood of mud that came and covered the entire earth, every inch of the earth, and that society was covered up intentionally. So a lot of these big buildings were torn down, or the mud had covered them to a certain level, and they basically just repurposed what was left, and then we went on from there.
So that's the video that I sent Maya earlier.
Did you send me that video earlier? Or you sent me the one video.
Hold on, I thought I sent it to you. Hold on.
Yeah, which is funny because they can date a lot of these Gothic buildings.
Right. So there are YouTube channels that are really fun to watch. Some people who do I really think it's an excuse to do like a travel blog.
Yeah, and they should.
Yeah.
They should travel for free.
They go around and they go to like historical monuments and stuff around Europe, and they'll see like windows that come like halfway above the ground. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
And they'll be like, Tartaria. You see?
Yeah.
This building was buried.
See, here's the thing. This video that I'm about to send Maya, give me 1 second. I have to rip it down off of IG, so then I can just send it to you and you can put it up on the thing. It really touches on that Tartaria, and it just talks about how, like you just said, these buildings that were not only free energy centers to be able to pull in things, but even the symbols that they use, the cross and the moon and the star, are all symbols. And how, can you zoom in on this one right here? Like the top left one? Yeah, that one right there. Yep.
Yeah, that flower of life pattern.
And that pattern is actually like sound. And basically these places are frozen. That's a big song. Like this is like a big that is a specific sound that sand would make to go into that like
that
shape.
happens.
Yeah.
We talked about vibration.
Yeah. But what I'm saying is like what you're looking at right now is basically a big sound.
Right.
Like it's a representation. Somehow they could like that vibration is what you're seeing. It's like this is like a hall of that vibration.
Like an ohm frozen.
Yeah.
You see, the thing about the Catholic Church is a lot of that stuff is borrowed from earlier Christianity. It's borrowed from like what they call the Occident, where it's like it's okay. So it's borrowed from older traditions that knew about this stuff, even Egyptian traditions that knew about all of this stuff. So we think like the Catholic Church is ignorant, that doesn't know anything.
What stuff?
about these shapes and like this, like looks like Rosicrucians and so forth and so on. We think like the Catholic Church, in the Dark Ages, they didn't know anything. They were stupid. That's not true. They had a lot of documents coming from like Alexandria and so forth that were just hidden, and they did understand. They did understand a lot more about art and spirituality than they let on.
Well, see, if you're looking at this picture, what somebody who is a Tartaria person would see is you see how those arches look like somewhat buried, and that there's like it looks like they should go down further, like where the doors are.
Oh,
they would say that this is just the top of a building.
Yeah,
That
and it goes all the way to
before
the ground.
1850. This building went all the way to the ground.
And they say that about
they say that about every Gothic
pyramids.
building, and that's the thing. So this is why I like this. This is why I was like, very interesting, because we've seen very compelling evidence that the Great Pyramid was actually some sort of energy producing device. Right?
Yeah,
Gold
that's a
and the
good
quartz
theory.
at the top.
Yeah, and it sounds crazy when I talk to normal people and I say this. It's really off-putting, but it's like
No, seriously.
there is evidence that it was used to generate some kind of electricity.
Did they steal the gold off of it?
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
it was stripped because it was covered in like pure white.
It was like
stone and with a
white
gold
limestone.
top.
It was a gold top.
Yeah, but there's a what was it? The Y files. If y'all can
Oh,
find
yeah,
that,
the Y
he
files
did
is
the best
very good.
breakdown of the Great Pyramid was an energy source theory I've ever seen. He made it really make sense.
Does he do the one about the circuit board of looking over the top and see how the circuits like it matches up to a circuit board of today?
He might have mentioned that, but really what he was talking about, like he got really into the details of the construction of the pyramid using like generally accepted archaeological stuff. Right.
So for people
that was
at
cool.
home, the Y files, Tesla knew the secret of the
This
Great
guy's
Pyramid
great.
because Tesla, and we're not going to play this whole thing because I don't think we're going to
It's
get
very
nicked
long.
for copyright and it's very long. But Tesla did have ideas about energy and electricity.
Transference.
Yeah,
Wireless
just going
energy.
through wireless
Yeah, yeah,
energy.
yeah. He had the big coil. He was trying to I've heard of that. That was one of his like one of his main focuses, right? And
Yeah.
like that was, or at least from what they found in one of the briefcases that they were able to obtain without the stuff that Vladimir stole. 'Cause you know about, they said he had like time travel information.
I mean, that's what they say. A lot of that stuff just got
I know.
hidden away.
I know.
And you
Yeah.
can, you can think
He had
people
that video
have.
too.
Oh, you got that video?
Did you know Tesla as a child almost died? He went into like some fever dream and he said that he was visited by aliens. That he was visited by interdimensional aliens and they told him he was like an important person.
Really?
Wow.
Yeah. That's like generally accepted in his biography stuff. Like that's not crazy stuff. That's legit. That happened. But so that idea about the pyramids is why that's kind of where it all comes from with Tartaria, right? Like that stuff about the pyramids makes sense. The stuff about an older civilization makes sense because when we talk about the Sphinx, and it's like definitely there's a great argument to be made that it's much older than they say it is.
Absolutely.
That there was a much older civilization there.
And there's even a much older version of it where it doesn't have that face because that face doesn't even match.
So Tartaria is sort of a repurposing of all those elements that are actually like, I think, very credible into something that's completely impossible and just really stupid and so obviously stupid. It's like we talked about last week. I'm like, why are they pushing this?
Because it
Who
becomes
is
a
this
game of
for?
telephone. It becomes a game of telephone. It started off with the real facts, and then you have to imagine that people are out here operating off of their own understanding. And so you tell somebody something, and then imagine them trying to tell their friends.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
And it
Then
just
it's like
becomes silly?
the pyramid with like you know what I'm saying? You know, I just imagine like, you know, like one of my dad's friends trying to explain it, like, man, and then like man, what you call it? Like and then boom, everything it's like, bruh, like.
But the people really push it and they say they really believe in it, but when you really think about it, it's impossible. 1850.
Right.
Everything before 1850 is a fabricated lie. Like when you
So-
really trace this down and look at the conversations they're having within their own communities, they're basically saying, like, well, what was there before 1850? And everybody says this Tartarian civilization. It was beautiful. It was like a utopia. What happened after? Mud flood. How did they cover it up? People covered it up, period. Like, but that doesn't make sense.
Well, where does that
on
much
Earth-
mud even come from?
Right.
That's exactly, and it came all over the earth. And then they talk about different styles of architecture. They'll be like, and these mosques, and what's going on in Russia and in Europe.
Yeah, they say that all like cool looking architecture is Tartarian architecture.
So that's what this
quote,
guy's
unquote.
going to talk about. So and look, he's using this exact building. That's crazy.
Oh wow.
He's using that
Westminster
exact
Abbey and-
building.
But they can trace it back to Henry III.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, but
let it play.
yeah,
Can the
we'll
people
play.
hear this? Can the people hear this?
Well, I sent to Amir, and then
Yeah,
Amir
you
puts
put
it
it after.
on
Cool.
the good audio.
This is not a church. It was never a church. And if you give me 3 minutes, I'm going to absolutely turn your world upside down and blow your mind.
Take your
You
3
may have
minutes,
heard about
fam.
a strange story going around that we were a part of an advanced civilization that fell apart due to some kind of invasion.
I do blame
And that
TikTok for
incredible
this all.
buildings like these, surrounded by all these smaller buildings, are actually part of 2 completely different worlds and times. If you're under the impression that structures like these can be built in our modern times, think again, because they can't, and they haven't been for hundreds of years. There are countless buildings like this scattered all over the world that we repurposed as banks, churches, universities, and state buildings. You'll also notice that a lot of these buildings have the word founded etched in the side instead of built. That's because we found them. We didn't make them. So let's
This is
talk
the
about
shit.
what
I
these
know.
buildings were
This
really
is-
used
yeah.
for before we repurposed them. It's becoming painfully obvious that our religions and our religious institutions do not serve us, and in fact were built to control us. We're starting to realize that many of the stories we've been told about our religions have been twisted and corrupted to imprison our minds and our spirits. Well, it gets so much crazier and worse than that. Because these buildings were never churches. They were healing centers and amplification centers for our meditation and prayers to make our thoughts reality, word to flesh. The painted glass windows and all the geometric shapes were meant to amplify those frequencies outward and inward to heal us and create a protective force field around the building and around the
So this is
empire.
based on
Going back
nothing,
to
and
this
I don't know
picture, you
why
see
he's
that
doing it.
circle right
Oh, I
there?
can
That's
trace some of that.
cymatics. Just go look up a video where they play sounds on sand and then the sand takes different shapes. It looks exactly the same as that. This architecture is a frozen masterpiece of music, which caused frequencies to emanate within and without to have all sorts of amazing and powerful
Pause it
effects.
real quick.
Yes.
Can you imagine living in your favorite beat?
Oh yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like what I think what he's saying is, and to your point, because you talk about Atlantis and Tartaria, right? As soon as we paused it. But it's one of those things where it's like there's about 14% truth. It's like juice. It's like buying juice from the grocery store. It's like it's purple because it's grape, and that's what they can promise you, that it's purple because it's grape, and that's it. It's like, but like AI has to watch this whole video and immediately eliminate the inconsistencies,
Mm-hmm.
and then only keep the part that makes sense. And then it goes to the next 400 videos. Like somewhere in there is the truth based on the consistency, and you know what I'm saying? Like, so like this being sematics, right? Like I buy that. Like who just makes that shape?
This is a cathedral that's been under construction in Spain since 1882. What people don't understand is these cathedrals, these massive cathedrals, they took a long time to build. So this is still under construction. So when he says this hasn't been built in 400 years, we haven't done anything like this in 400 years, that's not true because we're still doing.
It's 100% not true.
Well, here's the thing. Fine, it's 100% not true. But do we think about the fact that we're talking about 200 years ago? They're building this kind of stuff. 1850 is at least 150 or 170 years ago. They're building this kind of stuff, and we, with the technology that we have today, are slowly building it. Whereas,
No, this cathedrals took a long time to build.
There's a church in Bruges that was made of brick that was built over the course of like 220 years. And I remember I visited it. They have the plans. They have everything. It was built in like 1480 is when they started because it's a very, very old city.
right, but the equivalent of those years, based on the technology that they had, right, is about something that takes us 10 years to build, which will be enormously ridiculous.
But they still can't, like, for this art and for what they want, it's taken them over 150 years to build this cathedral, and they're still building it, and it's absolutely beautiful. So when we do try to replicate those things, it's not like we can't do it. It's just that
It's not practical.
You can't
it's not
automate
practical.
it like
Yeah.
we can everything else. You
Right.
can't automate it and like produce like a bunch of steel girders that are the same size and just put up a box.
It's like
That's
a
why
bunch
we
of
make
rabbis up there like ting 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 ting. This is the cross. Ting 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 ting. You know what I'm saying? Like taking my lunch. It's like the problem is that I just don't trust this is what leans me into the Tartaria rabbit hole. Because it's like, well, similar to the pyramids, how and why were they doing this without what we have now? And then as extensive as to still be around now.
Well, I can tell you,
It's stone.
well, it's
And it's
stone,
well made.
but
And they
why-
weren't stupid.
Yeah, and why is because they had nothing. They didn't have television. They didn't have radio. They had nothing. This was like this. I can't remember where I heard it, but somebody described church back in those days, 1400, 1500, as like your entertainment. Like you went to church, you saw a beautiful stained glass window that you didn't see anywhere else. You went and you heard music that you may not have heard anywhere else. Like it was like going to Disneyland on a Sunday.
And not to mention too, if you could go there and strongly meditate under conductors that are, a building is built in the image of a frequency.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's also their organs. They have these major organ systems that when you hear them and you're in that building and you're in that space, it is transcendent.
Mm-hmm. And they're again, it is a church, and at that time they're still a business. Right. So they were keeping people in church. They were keeping people. It's hard to be like, yeah, okay, come to my like box shaped building and give me half of your earnings. Right. Like you gotta really sell it.
Yeah, the Catholic Church was pushing the culture of Europe for most of the Dark Ages. It was pushing for, it's like the most powerful organization, and they did try to praise God. You know, they were invested in making these beautiful things. We are not invested in making beauty anymore.
No. Beauty is.
There's some sweet malls out here.
There are some nice malls. I've seen some
gallery
nice
is
malls.
nice.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying?
on
They
the
got a little
inside.
fountain, but I do feel you. I just think that it's just this. Here's, regardless of how long it takes to build it, who built it, this type of architecture speaks to another time that appears to be as great as it pertains to their ability to create as the time that we're in now. We just can't create this in a way that makes it practical for us.
Economical.
But it was practical for them.
Yeah, it is about economical and what they valued.
Yeah.
And we value malls and we value these skyscrapers and we don't value beauty
the
much
church
at all.
I grew up in, Catholic, the church in
The
Syracuse
Catholic
is pretty
churches,
beautiful.
yeah.
The church that was built in Eastwood in Syracuse was built in, I think it was like 1920. You could probably Google it. But it's not this, but it is still impressive and beautiful. And
Michigan State.
I think a lot of like Catholic churches doing a lot of. It's still, if they put up a church, it's not just going to be a box.
I went to Michigan State. We have these buildings. It was founded in 1855. We have these buildings that we have dorms that were built, and then we have dorms that look like Hogwarts. You know what I'm saying? And it's just like, and we call it like the old campus, that was around. That's some of the first buildings. And it's just like, why did these things look like this?
Like why? Yeah. And why don't they anymore? And really it was, if you look at what college was back in the day and what it is now it is a business first and foremost.
Yeah, before it was like an institution of learning, and learning was above all
They
else.
had
and
values and morals.
It
and
wasn't
now
about making money.
100% making money.
Right. It was like where you would go to become a scepter.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, that's the church in Syracuse.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the church that I went to. Right. So as a kid, it's easier to keep you kind of like mystified when stuff looks like this.
Yeah. It looked like the Holy Spirit lives there. Like,
well, it's stern too. It's like he's watching, man.
It's not. But then you go to the church right there, my Central New York. It's like I'm probably gonna sin when I leave there. You know what I'm saying? Like I'm probably gonna. The roof looks roofy. I'm probably gonna do what I need to do when I leave here.
The inside of that church is awesome, though.
Which one? The
If
Central New
anybody's
York?
listening who's been there, that is
The
a dope
Eastwood
church on
Central
the
New York?
inside. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. The inside of that is pretty crazy. It's like an amphitheater. It's cool.
Yeah.
And did we tell you that we went to that sound bath?
No, you mentioned that you guys were gonna go, or that you were gonna. You talked about doing a sound bath, but we never discussed it. How was it?
I had work to do. I
He
not
did
go.
not. He thought it was stupid. He didn't go
Hippie
in.
stuff.
Where was it? Where was it again? Which town was it?
I
in?
just get in the tub and play some Gunna. You know, he just,
Yeah, I was like, I have a speaker at home. Thank you. I can do this. It was in where is it? Joshua
No,
Tree.
was Joshua Tree
It's the big one out in Joshua Tree.
integration? Was that the one? Oh yeah, this is exactly what we went to.
The Integratron.
the Integratron. What? That sounds amazing. Like a Tron of integrity.
And you
So-
said it was worth it.
I thought it was an interesting experience. Like the
Oh, they
problem
have the
is,
singing bowls.
they have the singing bowls, and everybody goes around the edge and lies down. But if you fall asleep, everybody can hear you snoring. So my sister was always like, "Wake up, wake up."
Oh, that's probably one of the best naps ever. Just, you'd be knocked out, boy. What? Snoring, drooling. The best sleep.
And it's made of wood, and they have this whole story behind it.
So, Tony, you brought up something about the fact that now we have all this technology and we have all these distractions, whereas they didn't have that back then. I think that without these phones and technology and cars to be in and things covering up our heads, I think that we would see, excuse me, we would see a lot more phenomenon. We would see a lot more of the things, and we would kind of be thinking slow enough or slowed down or sped up keenly. Who knows? Like your brain less, what do you call it?
Distractions.
Yeah, I would call it distracted.
Well, yeah, distracted, but then also, what's the stimulated?
Mm-hmm.
Could focus. Like we live in these cities where you can't see the night sky because the lights from the city are, it's like when it got dark, it seemed like it just got dark unless they had, it's just like there are things that they probably were experiencing. I don't know, man. I can't imagine a more advanced society than us, like PS5s and stuff. But, you know what I'm saying?
It's what we put our energy towards, because we have so much knowledge and information that we could make the most beautiful things, and we just don't, because we put our energy towards these, silly stuff and infighting.
Well, we also forget that we do lose technology. Like Greek fire is something that just we don't know how they did it.
Right.
Like that was a real thing. We know it was a real thing, and we don't know what it was.
Oh, and the psychedelics that they used in the Bhagavad Gita, we don't know what those are either. What that is either.
Yeah.
And it could be plants that we know. Like we know that how you can manipulate a plant to become a lot of different compounds, right? Like you look at what they do with the narcotics that they have today and how they come from different plants. And if you just looked at that plant without any information or instruction on how to turn that into the thing, then you just, like we used to laugh, or we used to look at the yard that had a lot of dandelions and be like, ugh. Now you look at the yard with a lot of dandelions and be like, man, they're lucky. Like they got real good soil and they got real good, you know what I'm saying? Like they have the dandelions, like
And they got the
they could take those
greens.
roots. Yeah, they could take those roots, rinse those off and eat that.
That's coming from East Coast to West Coast, though, really.
Right. No, that's real.
Yeah, because
That's real, because I don't see no dandelions. I haven't seen a dandelion in like 7 years.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, but back in the West, I mean, in the Midwest, you're blowing the cotton things, and you're seeing dandelions. You see the little kids bring them to their mom, and their mom like, oh God, thank you, like, Mom, I'm trying to save you. These fight cancer. You don't even know that. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, so
Yeah, a lot of those old medicines, we've lost a lot of those, made fun of those, and then they refine them. A lot of times they'll take the old Chinese medicines or the old indigenous medicines, and then, tweak a few things, like, oh, we discovered this medicine. And it's like, we knew about
they
this
used to give
medicine.
heroin to children back in the day, in the late 1800s, because it's good for headaches, and so they couldn't sleep.
Right.
I'm like,
And
I
if
bet
they're
they had
crying
this.
too
I heard.
much.
I bet they was knocked out. I bet they was nice and sleep. Like, honey, wake up.
But that's the thing about the Tartaria thing. Is I think it's a fun. It's like a fan fiction for reality a little bit, right? It's cool. It's fun, but then there are people who are actively seemingly seriously pushing it alongside things that I think should be taken sort of seriously.
And we get back into disinformation campaigns. We get back into people purposely trying to confuse us.
Because how many people look? I get that a group of people can keep a secret, right? But every single person on the planet would have a grandfather or great-grandfather or great-grandmother who remembered the mud flood that destroyed the entire earth, and then everybody decided to cover it up.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
such
That's
an
true.
obvious...
That's true. Like my grandfather was born in 1936.
Yeah.
Which means his parents were probably born in like around 1912, which means that their parents were born around 1880s. And so like
It didn't just go away.
yeah.
They the last Civil War vet died in the 1850s. Like he would have remembered
Yeah.
because he was
Oh,
a veteran
yeah.
in Civil War.
And I
Like,
mean, I don't want to say it's all of them because these communities, it's hard, I hate to generalize because there's some people who might subscribe to certain things and not others. But if you go deep enough and they talk about, you look at them talking to each other, they seem to be suggesting that everybody just decided to make up every scrap of history you've ever read about anything that happened before 1850. That they literally made it all up.
yeah, but we have a lot of the original texts.
Yeah.
Yeah, but stuff started getting a lot more descriptive as we got into a more advanced part of our society, right? So like as our society started, like movies are kind of like more mind altering than books are, right? Like we have the ability to spend 40 million on a movie, make it look so real, The Eternals, and then have it fill in holes of stuff that we don't know because that's just what stories do. And the next thing you know, it's like, man, that's feasible. It becomes feasible. Like they take history and they play with it. One of my favorite movies, Abraham Lincoln and Vampire Hunter.
He was not a vampire hunter.
I know he wasn't a vampire hunter. I get that. See how she do me? I understand he wasn't a vampire hunter. However, it is just an example of how they play with history, overlaying people's real names, real occupations, real friends, and then filling that with holes that are the fictional type of. And it's like, it's hard to beat that with a book if you don't know the society.
Maya hates historical fiction.
Well, because history is
yeah.
already so interesting, and there's so many lessons you can get from it. Like if you go through Lincoln's story of how he came up, like he is one of the hardest men that this
He used to
country's
love to
ever
scrap.
built.
Yeah, he fighter. He fought vampires.
Anyway, but the way he came, what kind of a man he was. So it's like, why are we changing anything when we're gonna lose the lessons?
Right.
So I think that we should make historical fiction, or historical movies accurately.
To your point, though, in that movie, they tied in the slaves and how they were feeding the slaves to these vampires who were actually the slave masters, and why a lot of the slaves went and then
That's a metaphor for capitalism, in my opinion.
of course. Well, yeah, something like that. But see, here's the thing, though. Left up to the interpretation of those that come after us, who we're not here to explain, or like they're not here to. What if the hieroglyphics are just a dope movie that they would go and be like, "Oh my god,
And just
I fell
read
asleep
it.
right here. Wait, go, rewind it. Okay, wait, I was right here when I fell asleep. Oh my god!" And they're just reading the whole thing. It's like boom, and it's like that was like the biggest, grandest movie ever was the hieroglyphics on the great, pyramids. And people would go down there and look at that story. It's like we don't know because we have to take it for face value. They might find a script for Game of Thrones and decide that the history was dragons flying around with the castles. I'm just saying, like, we don't know what each civilization is going off of. Like, what is their beacon of hope? Because in the 1820s or whatever, it was words on paper, and it was hearsay, and it was what I say versus what you say, and who can believe me? And it's like, every time we advance in society, we have more answers to do about the past. It's like now that we got this, now that we can make holograms. You saw on Ancient Aliens, they're like taking flat pictures from the hieroglyphics, and then they're 3D printing them to put like a whole, like this is what they were doing. They were actually in some kind of spaceship. And it's like, like the problem with that is they can't say that it wasn't, and so a fact is just enough people believe in it and not questioning it anymore.
That's not a fact. That is a commonly accepted belief.
There
the
you
facts
go.
change.
A belief.
Yeah.
But facts do change. But here's what I consider a fact. Something that is you can get penalized for not believing.
Well, you can get penalized for not believing a lot we've seen over the past few years. They just make things up and then change the definition.
Very interesting.
So we're not going to go into that. But a lot of that is bullying. Because if you
Yeah.
didn't believe that the devil was sleeping with all these women, then you get, burned at the stake. So a lot of that is just
But that's my point.
power
though.
enforces truth.
When we advanced in society, we needed proof that the devil was doing all of this stuff because we could show stuff, right? So now, if you want everybody to believe that, you could drop a movie called "The Devil Wears Prada" or whatever. Everybody watches that movie, and it becomes like a foregone conclusion in people's minds. If you want to sway the people more that way, right? Like it was hard to burn somebody on a stake and then write a raven and fly the raven over there and be like, "This is what happened," versus it being like fictional stories that we could tell the children that make the children grow up believing, that this is what it is, and it's in songs, "Ring Around the Rosies" and all of that. It becomes, you could literally alter how people are experiencing factual information. Like you could
mythology.
literally,
So you're changing the mythology.
Man, yeah. I'm going to quote something. Okay. I'm not a fan of Jordan Peterson.
Okay,
You know
I
Jordan
thought you were
Peterson?
about to say Jordan Peele. I'm like, I didn't like Us. I didn't rock with Us too much.
Over-explained on us.
Okay.
Not a fan. Not a fan of Jordan Peterson. But he did say something in an interview that I thought was really interesting, that if you take the GDP of the country that we live in now and look at how much these Marvel movies cost, it's probably very similar to how much it costs to construct these giant sculptures and structures in like ancient Egypt, and it's essentially doing the same thing.
It's absolutely.
So they're monuments to our gods, quote unquote, and sort of these Marvel characters have sort of become our gods, meaning that they're instilling what we as a society want instilled
Our
in people.
values,
Our
yeah.
values.
Stories
what
that get
we
told.
wish that a person could be able to do, and the story of being so special that you have to keep it a secret, and because there is that whole thing where you're like, oh my God, I'm such a powerful being, I'm a mutant. But then there's also the fact that you're right, like we are constructing our story for the next generation. The problem is that in between generations, we go straight down to the bottom. There will not be any DVD players. There will not be any Game Boys. There will not be any TVs to plug in to play the PlayStation 5. Those things will deteriorate over time because we won't know how to use them, because you'll have babies growing up just surviving and eating squirrels, and it'll just start all over.
Oh, you mean over collapse, civilizational collapse?
Over a collapse of a civilization.
Yeah.
None of this stuff is like, we're going to forget. And then the people who were the great people who were the inventors, they're all dead. And so now we have to grow new inventors off of old or original ideas that they think are original, but they're not. We're just finding new ways to solve different problems, right? They were talking about fire coming out of the sky, right? And, that was the chariots of fire coming out of the sky in the Bible. But just like back in the day, we was rubbing two sticks together to get fire.
Or, it could be a meteorite. Like the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah could have been from a meteorite, and they're finding evidence that happened.
Right.
Or a city was destroyed, and not necessarily the way they put it, but then, you add on later, well, this city got destroyed for a reason because they couldn't quite accept that a city got destroyed just on random.
Yeah.
So they said it got destroyed because they were sinning.
I love it. This podcast is like it's like free samples of opiates, and it's just like and they be like, I'm hooked, I need more smack. And then it's like, sorry guys, as always, the questions, never the answers. This has been another episode of the CP podcast, where we just discuss stuff that we wish we knew. Government, if you're watching, Jesus, aliens, somebody hit us up and just talk to us about what's going on, because we would like to know. We're nosy. And I I'm not gonna lie, I pay my taxes like everybody else, and I don't know where to apply to be a technological duplicator, like Tony was saying. But it's like, I could throw me something, and I'll tell you how it work and what we could do, and just put me in the game, coach. You know what I'm saying? Like, or this number at the bottom of the screen, 1-800 midgets in space. If we want to send, if you know a midget that's not doing nothing, that is interested in this kind of stuff, you know, and I don't want to get canceled by saying midget. All I want to say is that did we ask all the midgets, did they not like midget? Because like I said, midget just sounds so delectable. Can you hi? Oh my God, it's a Girl Scout. Yes, I'm a Girl Scout cookie, and we're selling peanut butter midgets for our fundraiser. And if you would like to get a box of peanut butter midgets, you could just sign right. It's like they just sound so dang, man. Anyway, I think they're sending their midgets to us.
Seems like
Anyway, my name is CP. That's Maya. That's Amir. This is Tony. That's Kylie. We out of here.
Tartaria is not real. Stop.
We don't know.